tell you how I'm perceiving it, then you can tell me I'm completely wrong and financially illiterate. So it seems to me as if we've literally just heard the Chancellor make some very big claims. The biggest increase in pensions at one time ever. 27 million people helped by the change in national insurance, etc. And yet somehow or other, the whole thing feels underwhelming, and as if as a magician we were waiting for rabbits and doves to come out of the hat, and somehow they didn't really. Is that fair or is that not fair?
Or David Cameron to come out of the hat.
Or David Cameron, but
yes,
we've seen that. He did that last week.
I think it probably is fair because inflation is the real elephant in the room, to continue the sort of animal metaphors. Also, the burden of taxation. Taxation will go down a little bit, but within the longer term, it will go up by about 4.5%. So certainly since the start of this Parliament, since 2020, it has gone up to that degree. So people will get a little bit more money in their pockets, but they won't feel like it because things are more expensive. We have inflation at 4.6%. Rishi Sunak's got that down. He would say it's all down to him and Jeremy Hunt's sound financial management. Others will say actually it's to do with lots of economic factors. But for many people, yes, there will be some good things for them. Pensioners will have more money in their pocket, but then they'll look at things like coming down the line in the next few days, the energy price gap's going to go up, and a lot of that will just be swallowed up by increasing bills, and the cost of living crisis is not going away anytime soon.
All right, so you kind of agree with my response, which is it sounds terrific and yet somehow leaves us feeling dissatisfied, underwhelmed, and as if there wasn't some fabulous big ticket item that we can all say, well, this was great, this was spectacular, and he can't even be criticised for really pulling unbelievable cats out of hats just before an election because he hasn't quite done that. So nobody can quite say these huge and extravagant, exuberant promises which aren't right and aren't fair because he hasn't really quite made them.
Well, of course, we were told until a few weeks ago that any tax cut would be inflationary. It would actually mean that more money in the economy would drive inflation. Now it seems there is this fiscal headroom, this extra money for taxation. So that's an interesting one from the Conservatives' perspective. They've done a few backflips on that as well. The thing I think is quite interesting as well is that you have the reduction in national insurance. That comes in January. Everybody will feel some change in their income at that stage. And that, because it's not in April, because it's in January, I think that opens the door for a spring election. I don't think it'll happen, but it opens the door in case it's needed for the Conservatives, in case things turn around a little bit for them.
All right, let's bring Susie Boniface into this. Susie, you write for The Mirror. You may have a very different perspective on this. Did you feel as if the Chancellor gave the country a present or several gifts pre-Christmas to sweeten us and make us feel a little bit of that feel-good factor that we vaguely remember feeling quite a long time ago?
Well, really, it's been a bit like being mugged for a tenner by the bully in the playground. And he says, all right, I only want £9.99. It gives you a penny back again. So, you know, you've had corporation taxes staying the same. That's the big issue for people with businesses. Income tax is staying the same. That's the thing that makes most difference to most working people in their pockets. Somehow there's got to find something like £20 billion cuts that are coming from somewhere. And local councils are still having to prop up social care, which in itself then bungs up the NHS, which is something that most of us notice quite a lot of. And you only get a few pennies back for it. And all of this means, I think Peter's quite right, there's a very small boost, which is kind of just on paper. It's not something that most people are going to feel in their pockets. The political challenge for the Tories at this point in their government is to show that they are actually being able to make people feel better. And if all you've got is a few pennies here or there, for example, cutting national insurance contributions for the self-employed might save some of them about 190 quid a year. That works out to £2.50 a week. £2.50 a week is not going to, you know, float anybody's boat particularly. If you don't feel those differences in your pocket in a big and meaningful way, then when you do get to the polls, you know, there's the Tories are still in a lot of problems. I'm not sure there's enough in this budget to really reverse their absolutely dire poll rating at the moment. And if it is that bad, I think he may well go for an early spring election. Keir Starmer's been asking for access to the civil servants to start planning for that, and asked that about a month ago. So I think it's starting to look in Westminster behind the scenes like we are looking at May, and that Rishi Sunak will mostly be hoping that by that point there'll be some kind of growth he can sort of somehow talk about on paper, and perhaps enough of a feel-good springtime feeling that they don't all get completely decimated and he can get some of the Tory MPs to lifeboats before they lose power.